Welcome, my friends. You're probably watching this video because you're getting ready for the PMP exam. Well, today I'm going to work with you on being able to master all of the risk questions that you face. We're going to take a look at risk. We're going to start off from some very straightforward questions and we're going to build on it and get into some more difficult questions. But before we go any further, I really want to make sure that you have indeed covered Chapter 11 in the PMP Guide 6th edition or in whatever study guide you're using, because I will be asking you questions that revolve around the specific nature of Chapter 11 and PMI's definitions. So bear that in mind. Let's jump straight into it. First question. What is the difference between a risk and an issue? Now, if you need more time, hit the pause button, but I'll be telling you the answers to these and providing rationale quite swiftly. So this first one, A says a current problem. A risk is not a current problem. So that means A cannot be correct. B says a future possibility. That is correct, while an issue is a current problem. That is correct. But let's check the other options. A risk and an issue are essentially the same thing. That is not correct. A risk is an opportunity. Could be, while an issue is a threat. Doesn't always mean that an issue is a negative thing. And it's not fair to say a risk is only an opportunity. A risk could be an opportunity or a threat. An issue is not a threat, it's something that is happening now. So this is not correct. And the best option is B. A risk is a future possibility while an issue is a current problem. In project management, a risk is a potential future event or condition that may have a negative impact on the project. It could also have a positive impact though. But an issue is a current problem or concern that is affecting the project right now. Answer choice B correctly distinguishes between these two concepts. So hopefully you got that one. It's a very straightforward warm-up. Question 2. Which of the following is an example of a risk? All right. Hit the pause button if you need more time. Now, taking a look at this, option A, the project falls behind schedule and over budget. That is not a risk. This is saying this happens, right? So it sounds more like the current state, not something that could happen in the future. So it's not the best option. B, the project manager could, possibility, watch the language, could leave the company halfway through the project. Well, we won't say that is the answer without taking a look at the others. So let's take a look at C. The project team disagrees on the best approach for a key task. That's happening right now. And D, the project sponsor reduces the project scope. It's something that has happened, so it's not a risk. A risk is uncertain. And that's why the best answer in this case is B. Okay? The project manager could leave the company halfway through the project. Answer choice B describes a potential future event that could have a negative impact on the project, while the other choices describe current problems or concerns. Students might be tricked into thinking it's A, but that is an example of an issue. Let's go to our next question. Which of the following is not a risk response strategy? All right, now this is pretty straightforward for those of you who remember my mnemonic. If you need more time, hit the pause button. But my mnemonic for risk response strategies of a negative nature, for negative risk, is A-team. And A-team just stands for avoid, transfer, escalate, accept, mitigate. So the only one that's not listed there is resolution. That is not a strategy. Okay. So here's the 5 negative risk response strategies are escalate, avoid, accept, transfer, mitigate. D might seem attractive because it sounds like issue resolution, but it's not the right answer. Next question. What is the first step in risk management? Hit the pause button if you need more time. Right off the bat, if you take a look, you can see we've got identify, analyze, plan, monitor. Get into the rhythm of things by seeing analyze and monitor as not being first in what you do as far as any knowledge area. So it boils down to A or C. They're both in planning, but planning risk responses comes after the identification of risk. So the best answer is A. It's identify risks. The risk management process consists of 4 steps. You identify, you analyze, you plan responses, then you monitor the risks. So the best answer is A, which is identify risks. Number 5. Which of the following is a benefit of risk management? Okay, if you need more time, hit the pause button. So which of these is a given across the board, right? The benefit of managing uncertainty is for the risk management to result in a more favorable outcome, which has to do with the concept of success. That's really what we're looking for. It's not necessarily going to be increased velocity, which is a term we use in the world of Agile, and there's nothing wrong in that, but it's not a given. It's obviously not for the project to be longer or to cost more money, is it? So the best option here is D. It's increased project success. Risk management is a key aspect of project management that helps identify potential problems and opportunities and develop strategies to address them. Effective risk management can increase the likelihood of project success by reducing the likelihood and impact of negative events and enhancing the likelihood and the impact of positive events. The answer choice D correctly identifies a benefit of risk management. All right, let's go on to our next question here. Question 6. The project team has identified a potential risk related to vendor performance. What should the project manager do first? All right, if you need more time, use the pause button. Let's take a look at the options we've been given. So A, develop a contingency plan. A contingency plan is a plan that is used if a risk happens. It's like accepting the risk and saying, well, if it happens, this is what we're going to do. That is not very proactive. So it wouldn't be the first thing we would choose. But let's see if B is better. B says evaluate the impact and probability of the risk. There's nothing wrong in that. It just says you've identified a potential risk. So you just identified it. Okay? You need to do some analyses before you get around to doing any planning. So it makes sense that B is a better choice even based on those grounds. C says request additional information from the vendor. This doesn't make sense in the context of what has been told here. You've identified the risk, and what you should do first is really to analyze it, not request additional information, because the risk is related to the vendor. So going to the vendor and asking for information doesn't make sense. D says transfer the risk to another party. Or transferring the risk to another party, it just means that you're not really dealing with what is at hand. You really should analyze the context of the risk. Evaluate the impact, evaluate the probability. Yeah, there's a potential risk, but what if it's not as significant? So D would not be the best option. The best option based on what we can see here is B for a number of reasons. Evaluate the impact. When a potential risk is identified, the first step in risk management is to evaluate the impact and probability of the risk. Answer choice A is a valid risk response strategy, but it cannot be developed until the risk has been fully evaluated. Answer choices C and D are appropriate responses to a potential risk. Let's move on to our next one, which is question 7. The project team has discovered a significant issue that is affecting project schedule and budget. What should the project manager do first? All right. 3, 2, and 1. I don't know how many of you realize that this is a question about an issue, not a risk. Now, the question writer could have been more devious by putting in something relating to enter into the risk register, and some folks would have chosen that. But be aware that that could actually be on the exam. For the sake of this question, taking a look at the options, A, determine the root cause of the issue. It's not a bad option for this. Let's take a look at B, assign additional resources to address the issue. Well, you cannot do that without better understanding the issue. Updating the project schedule and budget, you cannot do that without taking necessary action regarding change requests and so on and so forth. So saying update the project schedule and budget is not a good response. And D, notify the project sponsor is like crying, mother may I. Never good options. Just notifying the project sponsor doesn't do anything. So the best option is A, determine the root cause of the issue. When a significant issue is discovered, the first step is to determine the root cause. B may be attractive to students. It sounds like a proactive response. But assigning additional resources without understanding the root cause of the issue may be ineffective. So C and D are appropriate responses, but they should not happen in the first step. Before you do C, there should be a change request process that happens. And notifying the sponsor, you wouldn't notify the sponsor as a proactive measure. For these questions, you always want to ask what is most proactive to do first. I think we skipped 8. So let's go to number 9. The project team has identified a potential risk related to weather conditions that could delay the project schedule. What is the best response strategy? Give it a few moments to think about it. All right, let's take a look at the options. So think about it. You are dealing with force majeure. You're dealing with weather. You don't have a handle on the weather. This is what they would say is an act of God. So if there is a risk related to weather, what is the best thing that you would do? Accepting the risk. Let's get rid of that straight away, because just saying, oh, well, there could be an earthquake, I guess we're doomed, so let's just accept it. No. There are things you could do to better cope with it, even if it were to happen, right? There are things that you could do to proactively work with that. So accepting the risk is not a good option. There are things you could do to cushion the effect. Remember, we talk about mitigating a risk. We're talking about the cause. We're talking about the impact, rather, and the probability. So it doesn't have to be the probability you deal with, but how about the impact, right? So that's not the best option. C, transfer the risk. Transferring the risk is not going to do any good because it's an act of God. So who are you transferring it to? Someone says, well, you could transfer it to an insurance company. Well, it hasn't specifically told us what the nature of the risk is. So just saying transfer the risk to who, how, what is not the best option. Avoiding the risk, it's weather. You cannot avoid. It's not a legitimate response when we're talking about weather. Now, someone could say, well, I could just go build elsewhere or do anything else. Well, let's read. It says, has identified a potential risk related to weather conditions that could delay. So it's not even talking about anything that could injure or maim. It's just saying it could delay the project schedule. So what's the most sensible thing to do? because you don't want the schedule to be delayed, right? Think about that. Transferring the risk to someone else, it's whether delaying the schedule. They're not going to be able to avoid that. So the best option, my friends, in this question is mitigate the risk. When a potential risk is identified, the appropriate risk response strategy depends on specific characteristics of the risk. In this case, the best strategy is to mitigate the risk by taking action to reduce the likelihood and/or the impact of the risk. Answer choices B and C, avoid, transfer, they're not appropriate because it relates to weather conditions. All right. D, it's not the best. So just accepting the schedule going off course is not the best. Remember, it said that could delay the project schedule. So always read the entire question. All right, let's go back to question 8, and that will be the final one. The project team has discovered a significant issue related to stakeholder communications. The team has identified that there is a misunderstanding between the project sponsor and the project team about the scope of the project. What is the best approach for addressing this issue? So, this is not a risk. Let's get that out of the way. So beware on the exam when you have options to put in the risk register or look for risk responses. You would automatically get those wrong. All right, so this is a very fair question in that you should be able to see what is the issue and understand what is the best way of resolving the issue. So developing a new communications plan for this issue, which is a misunderstanding between two entities, a sponsor and the project team, about scope. The communications plan is not something you want to develop a new plan and it will magically solve this issue. No, issue still remains. B, schedule a meeting with the affected stakeholders. Now that's not a bad idea, but is that the best option? We need to look at the other options. C, escalate the issue to the project sponsor. Well, the project sponsor is already involved, so bringing it to their awareness afresh doesn't make sense. So we're going to cancel that. D says assign blame to the team member responsible for the issue. Again, that's like a throwaway option because we know that we don't do that in the world of the PMI. So the best option, my friends, is B. It's actually schedule a meeting with the affected stakeholders. It's the best option because all the other options are not as good. When you schedule a meeting with the affected stakeholders, you're going to be able to understand what exactly is going on. When a significant issue is discovered, the appropriate response depends on the specific characteristics of the issue. In this case, the best approach is the one that you've often been told to beware of. Yeah, like hold a meeting. And even though it doesn't give more inkling, it is still the best option. Because the best approach would be to hold a meeting and discuss the issue and develop a plan for addressing it, right? But it wouldn't be just to go off and create a communications plan. So you always got to weigh what is the best option. Misunderstanding about scope doesn't equate to, well, I guess I'll go off and do a new communications plan and everyone will be happy. No. This is what makes some of the questions on the test tricky. Because you cannot go with a rote memorization for previous questions, say, oh, any question that has schedule a meeting is wrong. In some instances, they could be the most sensible choice, like this. All right? So the idea is that it's going to be a meeting. We're going to get down to the bottom of it. When it said with affected stakeholders, that's what enabled it to make more sense, okay? Now, in closing, I'm going to give you some guidelines for PMP risk questions. Number one, you got to read the question really well, just like I showed you. Read it carefully to identify whether it's asking about a risk or an issue. Number two, understand the definitions of risks and issues in the context of project management. A risk could happen, an issue is happening. Number 3, a risk is a potential future event or condition that may have a negative impact on the project. It may also have a positive impact, don't forget. An issue is a current problem or concern that is affecting the project right now. Number 4, look for keywords in the question that can help you distinguish between a risk and an issue. The word potential or could happen may indicate a risk, while the word problem or concern may indicate an issue. Number 5, evaluate each answer to determine if it is indeed addressing a potential event or a current problem. Future event, that's a risk response. Current problem, that's an issue resolution response. Number 6, consider the likelihood and impact of each potential risk in the answer choices. Number 7, consider the severity and urgency of each current issue in the answer choices. So if you're working with a question where there's a lot that could be affected, you need to factor that into the options you're given. Number 8, look for answer choices that are congruent with the question's framing of a risk or an issue. If you get answer choices that allude to dealing with an issue, be careful. Number 9, don't assume that a risk or an issue is always negative. It could be an opportunity or a positive event. There are sometimes things of a positive nature that are issues to talk about because it becomes important. If we could gain from it, it's a risk. If it's happening right now and there's things we're bypassing, it's not the opportunity we're bypassing a positive event, and that we need a strategy for. Number 10, when in doubt, refer to the PMBOK guide for definitions and best practices related to risk and issue management. You know, PMI's world is very different than a lot of other worlds, and that's why people struggle with this. Know PMI's definitions and follow these, okay? I wish you all the very best in your prep. If you're getting ready for the test and you're stumped, remember you can always get one-on-one help and assistance. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best as you continue in this journey. You want to subscribe and hit the like button. There will be more videos that address other topics and how we can answer those questions on the exam. See you in the next video.